Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Snap No Tap again. And Joe is back in town. See, when Joe leaves town, bad things seem to happen. Like when Martin leaves the country, like the world falls apart, like America goes under. So we've got to keep Martin from leaving the country. And we've got to stop Joe from all this traveling, man. It's got to stop. So
Well,
he's back.
yeah.
Huh?
I was gonna say my parole officer is working on that. So
Yeah. Well, house arrest. There you go.
yeah.
We ought to get my buddy Dan Nadolski. He's retired from the Cook County Sheriff's Department, but he did the electronic monitoring. He was one of the big shots with that, so he could get a monitor for you probably. He's retired now though. But no, it's we're in the midst of a storm here while we're filming this. So my power has already gone out once and it may go out again. So if my power goes, if you don't see me, which is good news, I'm sure for a lot of you. But it's because of the power. It's not because I finally had enough of Joe. But anyway, yeah, welcome, Joe. Joe's got a special guest that I'll introduce in a little while. But Joe, tell us again about this travel that you did.
Well, we're visiting my wife's family out in California, and so it was a great trip. Got to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, awesome place, a lot of fun there. I posted some pictures online for that. We went to a couple national parks, went to Sequoia National Park and Kings Canyon, which are all very awesome. Yeah, just had wonderful times there. I mean, California is just amazing as far as the natural wonders there, you know, and things to see. So I can't recommend it enough. I know previously I've been to Yosemite National Park, the valley there, which is just stunning and amazing. But yeah, definitely everybody should be on their bucket list going out there and seeing the national park. And actually, our guest Ben, who I will introduce in a minute here, he's from the West Coast too, so he's probably got a lot of cool stuff to talk about from where he's at. But yeah, great trip. Happy to be back. Back in the saddle. You know, you get homesick after a couple of weeks, but California is a place to be, man. It's a amazing place. So I'm always happy to go visit family out there. So how's your last couple of weeks? How did the seminar go?
Yeah, it went fine. You know, they're a great bunch of people. Oh yeah, so let me talk about the seminar. I don't have let me see here. Let me look on the calendar because I always give the wrong date. Now this is important. So we're August. Let me figure out how to do this on my, I don't know how to do this on my phone.
Is it the third Sunday in September?
Yeah, 1, 2. So it's September 18th, Sunday, but now there's been a change. We had, I thought, a year contract to coach out of that college, but the guy that set it up is retiring at the end of the month. So let me think. I'm not thinking too clearly today. Chuck May, who's handling this now, he's still going to try to pull that off, but it doesn't matter because we're going to use the Krav Maga school. So I did the seminar last week at the Krav school, okay, which is fine with me because they have actual equipment such as pads and weapons, you know, so I can teach the real shit coming up, which I plan on doing the first of the year, really getting in all the nastiness. Right now, none of that's people who think that they can use all these dirty tricks against a trained fighter, you're going to fail because you don't know the fundamentals. So you have to understand the principles, and that's what I'm working on with these guys: movement on the feet, movement on the ground. So that's going to be fine. But either way, it's going to be in either the Krav schools in Downers Grove, So Joe, you'll put the links again, just to Chuck May's website, because he handles all of this. But yeah, no, they're a great bunch of people. I stuck around and did a private with Tony. Hey, Tony, I did a private with him. Really great guy. And yeah, it was fine. And it's a lot cooler in there than the wrestling room. So
They've got
not that
actual
it's-
AC.
no, they don't have AC going. They just had a fan, but you have absolutely no comprehension of how warm it is in that wrestling room, to the point of it being not healthy. It's not a healthy atmosphere. I think we discussed this several years ago, there were people here in Chicago, athletes, dying from dehydration and shit, just getting overheated. Well, it's not so bad now. The climate's starting to change now, the season here. But there's this big misconception about working out when it's super hot. That's just really not wise. Your dehydration can have lasting, lingering effects. I know we talked about this because I suffered from heat stroke twice, and you're never the same after that. But anyway, this craft school, well, we did a seminar there before, remember, Joe?
Yeah, I remember for sure.
Yeah. So we have to make some differences. Obviously, the matting situation is different, but for me, it's great. And then they have a garage door that opens right up to the concrete, where the cars drive. So that's great for real life street fighting. Let's get out here. You think you want to grapple? Let me throw you onto that and see how you like it. Let me ride you hard. It's a whole different story when you're not on a padded mat. So yeah, that's great bunch of people. And we're just hoping that more people start to show up. Guys who email me all the time about training, you don't want to drive to where I live. You got to drive somewhere. Okay. We can't come to your house. So Downers Grove isn't that far for people who are in Chicago. Matter of fact, neither is Naperville, where the college is. But here's your golden opportunity to come. And if you want, we can make arrangements to do privates. After the seminar, I can't have access to the gym, during the week. It's not my gym. But Joe, you're supposed to be working on talking to Josh Piscini and Jason Bender about doing seminars or privates or classes or whatever in Chicago. So you could talk about that at the end of the podcast, because you and I haven't talked,
Yeah.
You travel so much. But anyway, yeah, no, it's just that. And I'm going to have a couple Tri-C guys coming into town. One's actually in town, but he came in unannounced, and I'm not set up to train them right now. I got commitments here, but they'll be training in a couple weeks, which will be, good. And yeah, it's all coming together. I'm trying to get everything ready for the seasonal change. I'm getting my mind prepared for. I know it's going to be 4 or 5 months before winter, or whatever, 3-4 months, but I'm getting ready for that already.
That's the thing. And I guess, Ben, I'll segue to ask him, because he's on the West Coast. He probably doesn't have to deal with this, but everybody in the Midwest, probably on the East Coast too, there's kind of the psychological thing. You have to start to brace yourself for what's coming, like when we get to the end of summer, like there's a lot of end of summer activities, but I can still feel that depression kind of like trying to sneak in on me, because we have like back to school sales. That's always triggers me. That's like a big trigger for me when I see that. When I see the 64 box of Crayola crayons in the Target, I get upset, because I know it's coming. Even though I'm not in school anymore, it's still just, like I said, you can't escape winter this way. So, but Ben Smart being on the West Coast and not having to deal with it, or maybe he does, I don't know, because you're up in the Pacific Northwest. But without any further ado, I keep kind of alluding to him, but Ben Sanford, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Thank you guys for having me. Really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Now, I met you, Ben, at this year's Scout class. So Ben Sanford, Chris Harley, and Joe Lau were actually teaching the martial arts curriculum during the scout class. And we touched briefly about the scout class as part of the tracker school, and had Matt Corandino, who's also one of the instructors there. But Ben, yeah, he's has an extensive background. It's funny, I was trying to think how to do an intro for him, and I was kind of looking over your online resume, and I'm like, well, how do I summarize this? This is not going to be easy. You've got so much in your background. I know you were training us in Kali and some Salat and things during the Scout Week at Tracker, but I know you've got a much broader background than that. And also, I know you've got kind of coming up soon, kind of a week-long seminar that you do out on the West Coast. Maybe we could start by talking about that and kind of letting people know what that's about.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so my martial background's primarily the last 20 years has been Kali and Sila. And in a fusion, my a system basically put together, he calls Sikal. And so it's really looking kind of where those two align, which is many points of contact. But so the Protector course is my friend Christopher Harley and I put it on, and it's connected to, or it's related to material we cover and teach and also learn and have been trained with Tom Brown at Tracker. So for us, Tom gave, besides teaching the martial arts portion of the week, Tom asked us to do the Scout Protector course, which is kind of like a continuing, immersion for students that are interested in that aspect of the Scout training. And so we've been doing that for about 10 years, and we run that once or twice a year. And then and as a way to try to gather more folks, because the prerequisites for the Scout Protector are Scout class, so it's kind of a smaller audience, and as kind of a rites of passage to get into in the first place. We created another layer of that training we call the Protector, which is just meant to be a little more not necessarily beginner based. I mean, everyone's welcome. It puts a lens of the Protector archetype over martial training, and we found that to be very powerful for us, but also for folks that come and try it out. So yeah, it's a week-long immersion out at our property here in Washington State. So we're outside the whole time, training by day, and by night a little bit, and then hanging out by the fire at night and sharing meals and stuff. So really a little less intense than the Scout class in terms of your schedule. You get to sleep, you get to have your meals and stuff, but a whole lot of fun, and in a cool, really natural setting. It's a beautiful time. So and like I said, it's not just for beginners, it's also for folks that have experience, because we've found that just bringing the role of the Protector into whatever martial background you have, it kind of is like looking through a new lens or a new perspective at your training. So
are you trying to maybe open people up to a different mindset about how they approach the martial arts, or kind of their role with it?
yeah, yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think you can take kind of any experience or even no experience and just kind of activate the Protector archetype. If you think of it in terms of roles and duties of human beings, we have, and this is something that we got from Joe Lau, actually, who I think you've had on there, and he's an instructor at Tracker. But when I was going through my Scout class, actually, is where that distinction was made for me. I had a previous history of training, and then at 25 I did the Scout class, and when this idea of the Protector was brought up, it really kind of really awakened me to a whole nother way of framing my training and approaching martial arts. So and we tried to do that somewhat during the Scout class. I mean, it's a little difficult in that context, but I don't know what you thought of that, but it's some of that's present there as well. But yeah, so it's a paradigm shift, kind of a philosophy, but also can be embodied, so.
And I know, and I'm going to kind of loop Tony in, because I know it's one of the ethics he's often kind of prescribed to me or talked about is that, that once you reach a certain level of training, there is kind of a certain maybe level of responsibility to those around you, kind of like the medical version of it would be like, is there a doctor in their house? Is there someone who can actually, maybe jump in here and kind of, think about your role in the environment too, and trying to make those around you safe. I know that's something that Tony's kind of informally talked to me about a lot. That, when he's out with his groups or whatever, that's something, he feels there's almost a duty or a responsibility when you develop these skills, to try and help if you can. And it's kind of a heavy responsibility. I think a lot about, and I don't know if everybody has that in them when they train. I mean, some people, they're just looking out to protect themselves, and that's fine. I mean, everybody needs to know, I think, how to take care of themselves and be safe. But I think there are people who go beyond a little bit. I often think about like on an airplane, because I was just traveling, where they say, hey, do you want to sit by this exit? Because we might need you to step in and help. And think about that as your role before you accept it, and so it's something to be, I think, aware of and think about as you do your training. It's not necessarily, some people just do it by default. It's instinctive. They just want to be that person, and other people have to, I think, make a conscious choice to be that or not.
Yeah.
Or you have to have the ability too. I mean, having the desire is one thing, but if you don't have the goods to back it up, you can inflame things. You can make it much worse. So you really have to know what you're doing, especially nowadays with everybody's gun crazy. But there's just people I know of, obviously won't mention names, but pretty famous, well, not famous, but well-known martial artists that fold under pressure, right? They don't do the street fight thing. All right. That's not their cup of tea. And where other people may mock them, no, at least they know it. All right. They're aware of it. And so I give them credit for at least saying, hey, I'm not a street fighter. I'm just into the sport aspect of it. That's cool.
Mm.
So
But-
Ben, sorry. Well, I was just
No,
going to say, hey, Ben, how did it all get started? When did you start training? You've always been in the Northwest. Is that right? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah. I'm in Washington State, and I'm in
How
the
far from
very
Seattle are you? So
about
give us
2 hours west. So if you can
Okay.
imagine west of Seattle,
Yeah,
there's
so the ocean, right?
the ocean. Yeah. No, actually, you do have to take a ferry and cross bridges to get to where I'm at. So we're out on the Olympic Peninsula, which is, you might have heard of the Olympic National Park.
Yeah.
So I'm right on the edge of that. So, and so I grew up here. I was kind of a feral kid running around the woods, and took my shoes off when I was like 8 years old and never really put them back on. I like your bare feet, Tony.
Yeah. Well, I knew you were coming on the show. This is for you.
So I had a lot of exposure to the wild, and then I was inspired by, I lived in kind of a small town, so I didn't have a lot of real direct mentors when I was younger, and came from kind of a conservative home. So there was a lot of kind of the world's a scary place kind of thing, So but I was inspired early on by Tom Brown through the tracker. When I was 14, I found that, and I got also got inspired by Tarzan books. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but those
Sure.
are awesome. And then got into martial arts, just the thing that was closest by, which was at that time basically just, I don't even know what you call it anymore, American karate. But and then I got into Taekwondo after that. And so I started training around 14 and got into what I'd say more formal training, guided training. And I mean, before that, I was just a kid, kind of a wild kid, basically inventing parkour, before it was a thing. So, which my knees are suffering now from that. But so what was I going to say? So from there, I went to the tracker school when I was 23, I think. So after high school, I did some traveling, saw the world a bit, got a little more sense of what was going on out there. And then because it is kind of like an island culture where I live. I mean, there's one road in, one road out, and you got to take boats and stuff. So it was a small world, but from tracker school, it was a really like a homecoming kind of experience for me. Finding a tribe of people that had a lot of similar values and also interests, and so I really pursued that pretty heavily, and took that training home, took it seriously, and was also paralleling my training in martial art. I was exposed to actually that's where I discovered Joe Lau and Bujinkan, so I got interested in that. And then I don't know how much my whole story you want here, but
We got
but,
time, so I mean, yeah, it's very
Yeah,
curious. 'cause I
Social
said-
security number, bank.
yeah,
information,
yeah.
we want it all.
Routing number. Well, you won't get
Right.
far with it. Sorry. So then, let's see, my younger cousin who joined the Navy and became a SEAL, he came across my current instructor, Ken Pinnell, who I was wondering, Tony, if you might know. You're from Cleveland, right?
Originally, yes, I'm in Chicagoland now, but yes.
Okay. So Ken his hometown was Dayton, and he's been there. Well, he's not there now, but he's spent most of his life there, and kind of had a similar background from what I gathered yourself, as far as the street and whatnot.
Mhm.
And so my cousin came across Ken, and he was teaching this Sikal, this fusion of Kali and Silat and Southeast Asian arts, and had kind of an edge to it that was very, very hard, very combative, and very real compared to some of the things you find. And he was like, something's cool here. Just so that was about 2003, and then so I flew out and met him, and we started training together, and never stopped. Became an
Nice.
instructor under him, and so that's kind of how I got into it. And
Yeah, I like people who do the reality. I mean, I like everybody that's involved in stuff, or even not martial arts, but I like the reality stuff. The real reality stuff, not the quasi realities. But that's just because there's nothing, yeah, it's great to win the title, or it's great to win the tournament and get the trophy. There's nothing more important than defending your life or the life of your loved one. That's the ultimate championship to me. So I appreciate guys like yourself that make the journey. You traveled halfway, almost all the way across the country to go train, which is fantastic.
yeah, did that for a lot of years. Kind of the old way of go hang out with a master for a week or a weekend, and then come back and try and unpack what you got and get beat up. And yeah.
Yeah, I get a lot of guys that come from all over the world, really. Now I have a gentleman coming in from California. Well, he's here, but he's in Chicago, but he'll be here at the house in a couple of weeks. And the thing when you travel this way, it's like don't try to cram it in, don't try to learn I'm not telling this to you, I'm just saying it to our listeners. Don't expect to learn the whole system, right? Because you'll learn nothing. You want to work on a few things and get them halfway decent, and get your mind stimulated. That's the biggest thing with me. No matter what we do, self-defense or just daily training, everything starts with a thought in your mind. Got to have your mind right, and maybe have a light bulb go off eventually, and that'll accelerate your training. But I know a lot of people they want to see things. They want to see all these different moves, but what do you retain? That's the problem. You got to try to retain. So that's just my take, because when I first started training, I don't recall now, that was 45 years ago with the catch wrestling, but I do recall that it took a while for the thing to sink in. Okay, now granted, I was in the same town, and I was going there basically almost every day. But like if I had to travel, it would have been hard for me to do, because it takes a while, for it to click.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you did it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's been super rewarding, and I think I must have showed enough passion for it that he eventually moved here. Shortened
Oh,
my trip. Yeah.
it's cool.
So we have, I have a community here because I have a training center besides martial arts. I mean, it includes martial arts, but it's I don't know, Joe, if you saw Tribal Edge, but that's the kind of multifaceted training center that I run. And so we had a community here that was already interested, and I was trying to, preserve and keep what I have been learning. And it took about 10 years, but he moved over here, and we had a good 5 years with him before he moved on. So
That's
Where's he at
fantastic.
now?
he's down in Arizona, Prescott.
Well, that's warm, man.
Yeah.
Arizona's too hot for me.
Yeah, he's got a great crew of special forces knuckleheads that he's beating on now, so he's having
Good.
fun. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, there used to be a guy. Well, this is when I was a kid, Michael Enchantis. He allegedly
I know
trained.
exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
him.
Well, I don't, I mean, I was a kid, so I don't know what's true, what's bullshit. I saw a couple books, but showing the stick stuff and what have you. But I do know that there have been some phonies that have been involved with the um, the special forces or whatever you want to call it, tactics. I've trained some of those guys. They're very, very nice guys, but there's guys that, made their living making these claims. And I can tell you they're full of shit. Not all of them, just there were
Sure.
certain ones. Some are alive, some are dead. But yeah, some of it is just
And I get the impression too that like, and I'm obviously not talking about your instructor or anything. I didn't mean to imply that, but that like I think guys in the special forces are always going around and searching and seeking different things to add to their game. And so a lot of times people will make that their reputation. Maybe they did did a seminar for the Navy SEALs, or came in for a week to work with the Green Berets, and that becomes their whole marketing scheme, which is unfortunate. But that's just part of it. But it's good to hear that, like, yeah, they're working with real people too, because you feel eventually they're going to find, like through trial and error, what works and what doesn't. But yeah, I remember going way back to Enchantis, and I still have some of those books shoved away somewhere in my attic. But you kind of mentioned your school, Ben, Tribal Edge, and I think I got the privilege of one of your students, I believe, was at the scout class, and I got to actually take the shuttle out with him, and his name escapes me at the moment, but
Cool.
I think so. Were you demoing with him occasionally?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really cool guy. And I want to he kind of talked about something I maybe ask you to elaborate on. He talked about kind of your school and I guess he referred to it as like the different like points on the compass, or the different pillars, kind of all the things that you're trying to cover in your school. Maybe you could talk to that and describe all the things that you're trying to work on or pass on in your school.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So our curriculum is again, it was highly influenced by obviously my teachers. That's where everything, standing on the shoulders of giants. My Joe Lau was instrumental in helping me frame our curriculum. And then he doesn't really know that. He didn't do that, like sit down with me. It was more of he had a program called Natural Duties, where he taught a week-long course called Warriorship Workshop. And that was also very influential on our Protector course and that whole ethos. So within that, Joe kind of distinguished the basic human roles and duties into 4 areas, which were the protector, the provider, the perceiver, and the preserver. And so if you think about that, archetypically as just huge containers for human activity and human needs. Inside of that, obviously the protector kind of holds the space for protecting life, the defensive qualities, and we have it today. I mean, it's still present with us. Obviously, it's law enforcement, the military, the security, and martial arts, and all that stuff. And then we have in the perceiver category would be tracking at the primal level. So meaning kind of fundamental or original level. So the skills that correspond to tracking are nowadays kind of expressed through information gathering. You know, it would be like the media, which sadly is struggling, but you know, even the scientific inquiry, all kinds of anything that's kind of pushing into mystery like that and gathering information. But traditionally it would be the trackers and the scouts, you know. And then we have the provider, which is obviously the life supporting skills of shelter, water, fire, food, you know, basic survival skills, but also the thrival skills of, you know, moving beyond that, building home, building, you know, basically nowadays it's our mechanics, plumbers, house builders, you know, the grocery store, all of those infrastructures. And then the preserver, which is the healing systems. So traditionally it was the herbalist, the shaman, maybe the that kind of work, but now obviously it's all of that infrastructure as well. So from emergency medicine to all the different types of care. So anyway, those 4 directions, if you will, and it's kind of modeled on a visually on a compass, like old, you know, in Tom's tradition, it's the medicine wheel or the directions. And so that's how it's kind of contained and organized as a way to start to understand it. And there's a whole very rich thing there as far as that being a very powerful tool for learning and for kind of holding information and wisdom and stuff like that. So, but anyway, so I used that kind of archetypal model to start to first of all kind of collect the skills, and then start to kind of unpack them and figure out how they connected and were related, and how to share them. And my contribution, if there is one, I would say is I have a desire to integrate and to kind of make things accessible for people. And I don't mean to reduce them to, I don't want to oversimplify things. I don't want, you know, to lose the richness, but to make it something that people can make contact with. So, you know, I use, and the clearest way I've found to use that is teaching from basically a principle-based approach, you know, and I've found that that's very powerful in all these different arts, and helps people connect to kind of the source, so that they can, the source of the teaching and the knowledge, so that they can develop their own relationship with things and grow. So anyway, that's kind of the core layer of our training. It's a little complex to just kind of lecture about, but I'm glad to. I'm totally a nerd about it, but I don't know.
I'm a little
Do you have any
curious.
questions
So,
there?
oh yeah, I got a ton. So obviously those 4 categories cover a lot of territory.
Yeah.
Do you teach all of those, or do you encourage people to seek out experts in those different areas? How
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
organized?
So basically, what I do is introductory kind of. I jokingly tell my students, you know, basically I teach one thing, and what I teach is, I guess there's 2 things. This integrated process of journey, like learning how to get on a path that you're interested on, whether it's martial arts or any path that you're fascinated by, and how to keep going. You know, how to explore, how to grow on that. And so that is, I would say, kind of the focus that I have is it's kind of, I call it meta education or meta school, where you're actually learning how to learn. You know, and I think that's a very important part of the process. So that said, I do introductory classes on each of those 4, and then encourage people to, you know, kind of point them towards sources and bring in sources as far as expertise. So generally though, it's funny, I haven't had, it's been a while since well, my school's pretty quiet right now, post-COVID, we're still kind of re-ramping up, but there hasn't been a huge need for bringing in outside experts. I mean, as the needs arise, I do that. It's partly, I think, because the way it's taught is so people learn how to do it themselves. They learn how to find it themselves. They learn how to learn themselves. So they're actually already in this research mode and also in this discovery mode, where I'm kind of like, I don't have to do much more, you know. So sometimes we'll bring in experts for workshops, but I'll find that the students that I haven't talked to for like a year, instead of being, you know, a year of space where they haven't done anything, they're like, hey, check out all this cool stuff I've been studying. I'm like, awesome, you know? So it's like, somehow it's planting seeds that kind of grow in people, and they're taking off. So,
Interesting.
Do you have to, so, obviously, my initial introduction to you was through martial arts, and I'm, initially always when someone talks to school, I kind of picture, kind of a dojo or a boxing gym kind of environment where people come in weekly and kind of train. I guess is, with your current martial art, and I can't remember the name because it's Kali and Salat, but
Sikal, yeah.
okay. So I'm assuming you have like regular weekly classes with that, you're passing on that tradition. But then for the kind of thing you're talking about, it seems almost like a mentorship thing. Like, is that something that people eventually, as they're going to their school, you're like, oh, this person, I think I could mentor them to go out there? Or is that something you introduce kind of right away? Yeah, I'm just curious to kind of the structure, trying to,
Yeah.
picture what's happening.
No, it's a great question and a great point, because especially for teaching, learning how to learn, that layer of teaching, it is a mentorship relationship. So I think I use what I call the core classes, or the core curriculum, those 4 domains. Basically, just quickly, one class is called tracking, one class is called survival, one class is called healing, one class is called combat, and they're just 4 placeholders for those so I see them as like doors or trailheads that go infinitely in each of those directions, right? And so I'm bringing people to those trailheads and getting them excited, and showing the integration, the relevance to their life, so that they can be inspired. And then if they begin to go on that journey, they start to kind of immediately, as pursuing any path, you have to kind of run into yourself, is what you run into. You run into your own resistance, your own blind spots, your own whatever, on any path of quote mastery, if you're trying to achieve something. And so it's a lot of my focus in terms of mentorship, and so what I end up doing is training mentors to help each other and help others walk a journey and move through kind of these phases of territory that are sometimes challenging, might cause people to leave or jump off the journey if they weren't otherwise aware of how the process unfolds. So there is I do have, okay, so everything right now is a little odd with recovering from COVID. I took all of our classes outside. Most of our classes are outside anyway, almost all of them. But I do have a home dojo. We call it the lab, which is, we shut it down at the beginning of COVID, but I still do personal and private training there. It's a little small, so so basically everything's outside right now. And I have a monthly day-long workshop, and then I have a small group of ongoing, weekly students. So it's been pretty small right now, but so I also have had programs that run for a year continuously, and the program itself is called The Journey, and it's the one that ties all of these subjects together and kind of gives the people this immersive experience. And by the end, they kind of have a sense of what it means to be a mentor, but also having been mentored through something. And so they can kind of take those skills as well. And so I find that they're doing pretty cool stuff out there in the world, and Michael was one of them. Yeah. So if you noticed, I can't claim all of his awesomeness, that's him, but that's probably what he was referring to, is that methodology.
Yeah, and it was just kind of an informal chat, and I can't remember how we got onto it, but it was just, and some of it was just me picking up him talking to other people, because I think, he had helped someone repair their vehicle, so he had some like mechanic background. He was very familiar with that. And then, he's also going to nursing school, and he's training in his martial arts, and he's at the tracker school. And so I could start to see exactly all these dimensions that you're talking about. And, so I was just kind of, he and I were bouncing questions back and forth, and I was still kind of in a daze coming out of scout class, so I don't remember exactly what
Yeah.
all the details of it. But that, that made an impression on me. And I think, um, it's nice to see that organization to it too. Um, because I think a lot of people, like, I think when we had Joe Lau, and I've been talking with him, and he's uh, been a good friend and helping instructing me over the last year or so. I've kind of, ever since I've been to tractor school, um, but he's, kind of, I don't know if he laid it out. Well, I guess he did, because you said he was an influence, but the different things he pursued in his life and what he wanted to contribute and how he wanted to um, take his martial arts background and his tracker background. And then he kind of added in the healthcare, like, it's just very interesting to see all those dimensions. And I think he kind of talked about just kind of, and I think you guys did talk about it too. And I apologize again, because the Scout Week is all blurring for me.
Oh, I
but
know. Yeah.
The idea
Half
of, like,
conscious.
when you show up at a place, ideally you want people to be like kind of happy you're there, like, not just because they like you, but also because, oh, this guy, he can help out, or he makes us feel safer, or whatever the situation is, you're bringing something to the table to offer that makes, and that's, I think, is a good, just a general life goal, whatever that thing is for. And so I thought that was kind of a cool thing, if people who are kind of out there in directionless saying, this is something maybe you should try, something that we should all be striving for, to try to be that person who can help those around us, whatever that might be. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the fact that you have kind of an organized school to try and mentor people in that direction is awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Trying to help. Yeah. Basically, awaken people into that possibility and train them that way. And that's in our training, that's what I refer to as the everyday hero. That's just, small h, just a person who's ready, willing, and able, and can hopefully lend a hand or make people feel a little safer when they're around. So, not that they're a superhero walking around, it's just when things get challenging, they're the one that's still there, and they don't think anything of it necessarily. It's like, yeah, I know how to do this, so that's to me a goal. That's pretty
Yeah, it kind
pretty
of
awesome.
reminds me, so in my band, our drummer is Tom, but he's been in the fire service forever. He's a paramedic, but we just had a few situations where, like, we had a backyard concert at his house. It's a thing. If you're ever in the Chicago area during the summer, we'll have to have you come out to it. But someone got their car kind of partially stuck in a ditch, and Tom was the first guy there, figuring out how we're going to get this car out of the ditch. And everybody's like, oh, thank God Tom's here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool to be that guy, or try and work on being that guy. It's something to strive for, I think. And some people just do it unconsciously. They just want to be there to help. But it's also like, like I said, it's a motivating thing. I think it can be for some people. I want to ask too, in your opinion on this, and maybe there's not a straight answer, but do you encourage your students to be kind of generalists in all four of those dimensions, or do you, at some points, like, someone's going towards one direction, do you want them to specialize? What's the balance there?
Great question. Yeah. So, it's it kind of naturally emerges. I think of it as building a fairly strong base in these different areas. And this is for folks that are sticking around and, say, doing our journey program. But what happens is, just like there's different directions of focus, there's different constitutional, people are just different. They have different natures, different interests, different gifts. And those things just emerge, they just show up. And so it's not really something I have to suggest even or coordinate. It just, if you get people excited about living and about contributing, they just they get called in a direction, And so one of the quotes I like, actually, I don't remember where it's from, is you can't make a choice you can't perceive. And so what I'm trying to do is kind of reveal these different, give them more choices so they can actually be an artist in different ways of life, So yeah, that kind of takes care of itself. And it is important, though, because there is a point where you can't generalize on everything. You need to pick a path, but along with that, if you're picking the path, if one of your skills is learning how to learn, it does kind of give you unique access to any path you're on, and kind of laterally a little bit. It's not like you can master everything, but there's insight that you can gain. So I guess what happens is people will, and the way it's the way we do it, the way it's learned is like you don't leave your insights in the dojo. You don't leave your insights in the training field. It kind of goes with you through the day, and you find yourself making connections and finding deeper meaning in your lessons, whether it's a physical lesson, a mental insight, emotional shift, whatever it is, that kind of permeates your life, kind of horizontally. And so I found that to be pretty amazing. I think that's because the practices are embodied. They're not just propositional or theoretical, like going to a college course. It's stuff that you are having an experience that's shifting you at some fundamental level, that's changing how you see the world and giving you perspectives, and that permeates out. So I was going to say too earlier that the Greek word kairos, or hero, translates to protector, which is also why I use that word. And as far as specialties in our school, that's my personal kind of specialty. So the school does have kind of it leans in that direction overall because of me. That's my influence. And the protector does in some ways hold, and I've even heard this from Tom, kind of holds it's like an umbrella term for, just like hero is kind of, it's for all of those skills in a way. It's putting oneself between the unknown and the tribe. It's being that buffer.
Some people aren't cut out for that. That's the thing, and that's okay. Everybody that I think is cognizant mentally has a role somewhere or another. They're going to fit into this whole scheme. And I think too, and I had to learn this sometimes the hard way, when I started teaching years ago. What I want for the student may not be what he or she wants, okay, or needs. So I had to learn the hard way that, okay, I can't, they're not going to be able to grasp this at a higher level because their heart isn't in it. They want to go in this direction. So I have to go in that direction for them. So it's about them. It's about making them better. It's not about patting yourself on the back. Yeah. And I do find that there's roles, there's things that I wanted to do in my life. I really did. And I wasn't suited for it. I had to walk away from it because I wasn't cut out for certain things.
Sure.
So, can't do it all, that's it, and especially when you're talking about, well, this isn't necessarily like street fighting now or survival skills, but when you're talking about the best in the world at something,
Oh yeah.
you've got to really be, it's got to be narrow as can be. There's just no coming from like, well, even the fighting, but just really coming from like the music world. There's folks that are, they can play great, classical music and great jazz. There's a few that can do that, but they're not world class at either. They're good, but like I've seen some great touring classical pianists. That's all they do all day long, and you get them to try to play country or jazz, it isn't happening. Okay, because that's just not their realm. So I think a lot of people want to do a lot, and where this is probably going back to that generalization or specializing. So having a musical knowledge, that's general. Okay, the notes, the theory, blah blah blah. But then when you specialize in something, that can take you to levels that you just could never imagine. I've seen some pretty world-class people, man, and it just blows my mind. I'm like, Jesus, man, I'm like a rank beginner compared to these people.
Yeah, that's a whole nother world. You're right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, too, and like what with me with the fighting, I lived and breathed that. There was nothing else until I got to a level, okay, of being comfortable and like I knew what I knew. Then you go into the maintenance phase, right? You don't want to start backsliding, but you peaked. All right. So you want to kind of keep it at that level as long as you can. And then that gives you the chance to branch out into other things. Cause I had a lot of hobbies or a lot of interests besides just fighting. I had music, shooting pool, strength, weight, powerlifting. But I take things in chunks. I'll keep the interest going mentally. I'll dabble now and then, but I got to finish the task at hand. And then once I get to that level that I want to be at, then I could start focusing. That's at least works for me. That's what worked for me growing up. Now I'm older. It's hard to do anything really, but I do have fond memories at least. What I remember. Even that's slipping. My memory's going.
Do you find if I
Go ahead.
can I just ask you, Tony, do you find as you've matured on your path that your focus has shifted from, or obviously if like I have injuries and stuff I have to work around. I'm not that old, but I'm approaching 50. And I'm also an arborist. I've been tree work my whole life and I've been pretty beat up with that. So I know how, for me, I'm kind of strategy, the strategy end of things have become much more relevant to me, I guess. I used to power through everything, and now I'm just kind of like getting way smarter. So, I mean, do you find that to be important for you?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's all about using your brain. That's the number one muscle right now for me, thinking things out. And but I didn't do this all of a sudden because I've been injured for a long time, different injuries. So I've had a long time to develop that way of looking at different things, and to become, at least I would hope, become more efficient at what I do. Not necessarily shortcuts, but taking all the superfluous stuff out of it. Okay. Somebody asked me, if you had the power to use just one move that would work against anybody, what would it be? And I said, without a doubt, I said one punch knockout. And they were shocked because they figured I was going to say a chokehold, an armbar, leg lock, or something. No, that's too complicated. That's too involved. Just one punch and knock you out. That would be the ultimate, right? Because that's efficient. It doesn't take much effort to throw a punch. So that's how I kind of look at my life now. Things in the past that I would do that may have been a little more flamboyant, I've tried to get all of that out of my system. And yeah, I just try to be more efficient and use, like you said, strategy, think things out as opposed to relying on my physicality to just overwhelm someone. So in a way, I think I'm better because of that development, because I didn't have that when I was younger. And nobody can have that because it just takes years on the job, so to speak. It takes experience, like music. If you're a jobbing musician, not in a band now, I'm not talking about a band, but if you're in a jobbing musician, a freelance player, you end up playing tunes you've never heard before. Okay. So your repertoire grows. And that happened to me, when I played the drums with different bands every week. I was sitting in playing Lord knows what. All I would say is, what breaks, are there any breaks in the song? What's the rhythm, what's the tempo? And then just go from there. So yeah, I didn't know all that when I first started jobbing at 18. I had to develop that. So same with for everybody out there that wants to learn it all now, time will come. In time, your life experiences and should that'll give you something you can't get in college or even in a martial arts school.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm referring to by journey, is thinking of it as a skill, like actually learning how to grow in a not just not just trying to get somewhere, not trying to get to a goal, but actually appreciating the process. And I think that makes your end result, if there is such thing, way more a different quality. So that's cool. I think, you know, there are certain things that can be taught. Most of that's just, like you said, experience, but
Well, you know, the goal thing too can be a double-edged sword, because once you reach your goal, then it's like, now what? It can
Yeah.
almost be like you know, anticlimactic at times. You're happy, oh yeah, I did it, and then once that wears off, it's like you're alone in the room. So you know, you constantly want to. I believe this is for me now. I'm not saying everybody has to be like this, but I always have different interests. So once I've accomplished, if I've accomplished something in one avenue, now I want to focus on something else. You know, what's the end game? I'm going to die in the end anyhow, just like everybody else, but I want to at least try to live my life to the fullest, because I think, especially in my personal life, it hasn't been about me for many, many years. All right, for over a decade. I'm dealing with outside forces, you know, taking care of other people and just things that I have no control over. So I know there's other people in that situation or worse. But when you have a chance to take control of your own life or something in your life, an aspect of your life, there's nothing more enriching to me, I think, because now, you know, you're making yourself better. Ergo, I think you can make everybody else around you better. Because if you're always down in the dumps and the mope, you know, it's kind of, who wants to be around that? But when you walk in tall and you feel good, you just kind of give off that vibe, that aura, and it just makes everybody else around you, you know, you become an uplifting person. So yeah, that's what I'm in that phase now, where I'm trying to get things organized in my life right now so I can start working on myself a little bit again.
awesome.
Yeah, well, it's everybody's got their own journey, you know, everybody's got their own thing. You know, Joe's more or less a traveling man. I'm not a traveler, okay? So I'm more of a homebody, or like my neighborhood, my area kind of guy. Joe likes to go everywhere. I just like to go to Cleveland if I could, you know, just to see my old, you know, just the area. Or just go to Chicago. So there's so much depth in the city. There's so much to do in Chicago for me now. And I mean, you know, he's a nature guy. You guys are both nature guys. I'm not a nature guy. I'm a city guy. So for me, I can get so much out of just being in a city, and absorbing the culture and the people. It's just like, for me, going on vacation is to go to Chicago, because I can go to a Polish area where they don't even speak English. I can go to a Greek, you know, Italian section, Irish, and it's like an escape for me. It's like, in a way, it's like being in Ireland or being in Italy for a while. I just love it. You know, that's just me. I don't get to the city too often, but I will again.
That's cool.
It just
Yeah.
cracks me up that you call me the nature boy, because I'm like, when I go out to the tracker school, I'm the city boy. You know, I'm like the guy who doesn't have, no matter which household he goes to, he's the odd man out. But it's not in a negative way. For I don't think either of it. Actually, I just had a talk with, and I can't remember her name.
Raquel?
Charlie's wife.
Trixie.
No. And
Meredith?
but Meredith, yes, Meredith. She had a really good point, because I was kind of describing this scenario to her. It's like, you know, I love going to the tracker school. I want to be more involved in nature and get it. But, you know, there's definitely some people at the tracker school that I've dealt with who are like, you know, they're off in the woods and they're never coming back. Like this, they found their thing and they want to get as far away from civilization as possible. And I said, you know, I still always love it going back to the city and being with people, and like Tony, exploring these neighborhoods, hitting these restaurants, and kind of being both. And she said, you know, we look at you kind of, you know, we describe you people as kind of a bridge. You're kind of between the two, you know, and that's okay to be both. So it's not an either or. And I kind of, that was a nice little sentiment that she gave, and gave me think, because I was always kind of conflicted. It's like, am I supposed to be one or the other? You know, because I find myself enjoying both, you know, and sometimes those two worlds, at least on paper seem to clash, but I don't think they necessarily have to. I think you can, have a little bit of appreciate both necessarily, the achievements of man and seeing nature, how man expresses that. I love the architecture of the city and the culture, like Tony talks about the food and the different people, and just like I said, I grew up in a major metropolitan area, so it's going to be hard for me. I mean, some people, they get out into the woods and that's it. Like I said, they get their calling and they don't want to come back. And that's awesome. But
Well, that would be me, but it would only be, I'd go out in the woods and never come back only because I get lost.
right. So
No, but
that
you have to
reminds me,
have
Tony,
both.
I need to take you on a walk in nature, but we'll talk about that after the show.
Yeah, all right. I'm not going behind any bushes with you, pal. But no, it's when you look through the history of the world, the civilizations, they sprung from, yeah, there was always the rural thing, but cities, big metropolises. So the world wouldn't be the way it is now without that element. So I think sometimes people forget that, especially now that I live in like a rural area. They don't get that. Part of the reason, like they hate Chicago in general, where I live now, but part of the reason that they got what they have out here is because of Chicago, because this is like a satellite, and you have folks like myself and others, of course, that moved out here from the city. And while they may resent it, the locals resent that. I know that because they've said it to me. You wouldn't have what you have out here if it wasn't for the Chicagoans or other people more cosmopolitan that moved here. All right. And now businesses are like, well, we got this influx of, a variety of different types of people. And well, now we have a chance. Let's do this. Let's build this, or let's get this store, or blah, blah, blah. So there is, that lady's right to talk about a bridge. There is an intertwine. Things are like that. There's not this chasm where you can't cross the Nile. You have both sides. And when you can meet somewhere in the middle, I think it can benefit both, because there's some nice things to being in a rural area. This is as close to the woods as I'll get probably in my life. But, you have some serenity on paper, it doesn't really play out like that, because I got a little soap opera going on the street behind me. This is the back of my house. And I actually have to close my door. I have a door, like a patio door in my bedroom. I have to keep it closed now at night because for the last month, they've been at it. Okay. They've had they've been screaming at each other for like a week and a half. And then for 3 days, they were in love again. And I could hear that part of it too. And now for the last week and a half, oh no, it's worse than it's ever been. I mean, they're threatening to kill each other, and it's just kind of, get out of this house. No, this is mine. You get out of here. It's classic, but so yeah, there's some stereotypes about, oh, it's so peaceful and quiet out in the rural areas. Not really. And then I had 2 cats, stray cats, getting into it at like 2:00 in the morning, screaming at each other and whining, crazy shit. You just don't know what. And then you got raccoons, you got friggin' deer, you got skunks, oh, you got everything. Rabbits, or not, well, you got rabbits, but chipmunks, little chipmunks and squirrels all over the place. So yeah, it's a balance, I guess. But I do, I mean, I've been in the woods. I'm kind of clowning. I've gone camping, but that's, to you guys, that's nothing, right? I mean, you guys really camp. I had a tent and a bunch of guys, and beer, a lot of beer. But that was years and years ago. But sure, it's everybody's different. That's what makes the world what it is. And part of what Joe was saying about the different cultures, like in a city like Chicago, that's what I thrive on is, because coming from Cleveland was like that. Cleveland was a very ethnic town. Chicago's, very ethnic. And you get to learn how people from Yugoslavia or from Hungary, Romania, or whatever, these countries that you'll never probably visit, you get to know these people and you get to see what the culture is like. And that's just fascinating to me. I love it.
That's really cool. Yeah. I've actually found it useful in in our training. I have removed the man and nature distinction, if that makes sense. So basically,
What do you mean?
it's all nature. Everything's nature. As soon as we say humans versus nature, that kind of thing, it causes all kinds of problems. Actually, I think so. Even cities are in the bigger scheme part of nature. I mean, it's in the sense of like it's part of the planet. It's just resources and things that we have modified, right? But it's all nature, and because it all follows the same principles. So now maybe it's not all wild. That's a useful distinction. Like wild nature is one part of it, but human nature is another part of it. So anyway, I totally agree. I think it doesn't need to be separated. In fact, I think it's an artificial separation, and it's not a useful one.
I'll drink to that. I'll drink my water.
I often
Cheers.
thought of it as about like kind of like being in the anthill or being in the beehive and leaving the beehive, or this is the environment that we've created for ourselves, or at least some of us have. But it doesn't mean it's not a part of nature. It's just
Totally. Yeah.
and and the funny thing is nature still crops up. It's funny, like I now catch myself trying to pay attention to the different weeds and things that are growing in the sidewalks and the cracks and because some of them's like, hey, I could maybe use that for a bow drill, or like
Yeah.
these plants are not just random weeds. They actually, and even the idea of, they have the idea of the sit spot. Well, even if you're living in the city, if you just can open up your window and see what birds come by. I mean, even when I was in the heart of the city, I'm not in the city right now, but I grew up in, in like Tony, we have squirrels, we have birds. I mean, not to the extent like, you don't have the raccoon cat rumble that Tony's having to experience nowadays on a daily. But I mean, even in the city, like when he was in Cleveland or I was in the city in Chicago, nature still creeps back in. They have, to varying degrees, and so you're still, I had the river in the north side of Chicago where it was just, I would cop the fence and just go exploring back there. That was my nature exploring as a kid. So it's you can never be completely separated. And I guess unless you're in a rocket ship out in space or something, but even
Hey,
that,
there's still nature, right? It's the
yeah.
universe then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
Um,
everything's responding to the laws of gravity, the laws of entropy, all this stuff. It's all, yeah.
Well,
I don't know how. Well, go ahead.
It's an interesting concept because it's all relative. Like I've seriously met people from other parts of the world that are like, you don't really have slums in America. You don't have the ghettos or the slums like we have in their country. Okay. Or like what's going on in Ukraine with war torn or other areas of the world that's, the Gaza Strip and shit, I mean, so when people here, for example, make snide remarks about the violence in Chicago, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, there's areas of this world that are just like literal war zones. So yeah, I take things, I try to take it with a grain of salt. And I'm a numbers guy, so I understand statistics. Like statistically, Chicago's not really that dangerous compared to other like small towns somewhere. But for me, it's finding your comfortable slipper, your shoe that you like to wear. Become that, just try to find where you fit in the best you can. And for me, I do like, there's parts of this I like out here, but I'm a city guy too. That I'll never not be a city guy. Just like my heart is always going to be Cleveland, even though I've lived in Chicago longer than I lived in Cleveland. I'm a Cleveland guy. I mean, that's just how I feel. My heart's Cleveland. Okay. And that'll never go away. Pretty much everything I've become was because of Cleveland or Clevelanders, and then I branched out, of course, but yeah, I just got that affinity for my city, Cleveland, and then secondly, Chicago.
Yeah, I feel the same way about where I grew up. Yep. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Gets into your blood. It it shapes you. Yeah.
Yeah, it does, good or bad, good or bad. It's life experiences that, yeah, shapes you exactly. Everything else as you get older, is maybe the finishing touches, the paint. But Cleveland, in my case, yeah, it formulated me. And I've read or I've talked to people too that were Army brats that, their father was in the service and they're always all over the place. They're a year here and then a year there. I felt bad for those people because they never got roots. Okay. Once you start to make friends as a kid, now you're taken away and that jazz. I don't understand that. Just like I'm an only child, so I don't understand the brother sister thing. Okay. I don't have a conception for that. And I wasn't raised by my parents, so I don't have that conception of that mother father element, right? So I have a hard time seeing that. I don't get that.
Yeah.
So some of my life experiences, like when I talk to martial artists in particular about the violence that I've been involved in, they don't understand, they can't get that because they've never been involved in it, and especially as a young child. So they're never going to be as intense with it as I am. Okay. It just never will happen. So you get what I'm talking about because you have life experiences that, like Joe's never going to really get it like you do because you were raised like that. Okay. You were out there exploring in like an isolated area where you're not even on the mainland of the United States in essence, discovering shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, I'm
So
not
what's
sure how
on
much.
your agenda now, Joe, to change the subject quickly? Like any travel or what? Are you
Oh, no,
staying
I'm
home
just,
for a while?
no, yeah, I gotta stay put and trying to get back in the groove as far as training. I've been kind of, like I said, back and forth to tracker school and then to California. So I've really had this kind of summer off from, I've been working out on my own, but I need to get back into the gym and get kind of back into the routine of things. So that's kind of also, so I finished the MT training this fall. So this fall, I'm not going to be in any classes. I just have to take
Good.
the national test for that. So I'm prepping for that. So that's on the
Nice.
short-term horizon. And then we'll see what that goes. So I'm just going to kind of spend the fall getting back into the gyms. I'm going to hit up Jason again. So if he's listening, I'll see him soon. And then we'll get things going there. So that's kind of on my short-term list of my plans, and then we'll figure out where to go from there. I did, Ben, so I don't know how much time you've got allocated, how much time you can.
I'm good. Whatever.
Okay, cool. Because I kind of wanted to dig in. I want to circle back a little bit if we can into kind of, and I don't know if this is something easy to articulate on like a podcast or a YouTube thing, but I'm very curious about your let's talk. I mean, this is a martial arts focused podcast. A lot of times we get off on other tangents, which is cool because I think we have a lot of interesting people to talk to. But I'd like to talk, if we can kind of dig into your style and maybe kind of describe its history and like its influences. So were there specific lineages of Kali and Salat that it comes from? And then like where do you see that they fuse? Is like Kali more the weapon system and Salat the empty hand? I know obviously Kali has empty hand components. Some would say it's, just, another expression of the art with or without the weapon. So just kind of like, yeah, kind of technically do kind of a deep dive on how this system came about and those things.
Yeah. So they are historically, they have some deep connections. I mean, they're from similar Southeast Asia, similar part of the world. I think one of the things that makes them, that kind of stylizes them, both arts, is being island cultures. So there's geographically, we're talking about island chains that have thousands of islands on them, right? With people living on these places. And so you have um, you have the need for, the human need for protection and defense, and it ends up taking all of these different varied expressions because you have different family systems and different little regional changes. So both for Kali and Silat, they have like these super diverse, but very, in some ways similar, some ways very different, but feel, and similarities. So there's a lot of systems, and there's a lot of, well, Silat just translates, the word means to fight. So that's what it is. It doesn't say much in its title. So there's different types of Silat, right? So in the art that I do, or art, it's hard to even say art because it is this collection of all these different arts, So, but it's been influenced by, right, the primary sources for Silat were through the Detoire brothers, which is the system of Seurat, and it's primarily the system that I learned is called Bukti Nagara, which is it was taught by Hendecker Paul Detoire, the oldest brother of this Detoire family. So they were Dutch Indonesian brothers that apparently they're pretty crazy. I actually didn't get the chance to meet them. They were older at the time. Well, they were even older, I think, when my teacher was training with them, and they passed. Actually, I think one of the youngest brothers still around. I'm actually not sure how many are still with us, but no, I think it is just Uncle Bill, they call him. So anyway, so these Silat arts, they have a history going back to, supposedly, now this is coming through Guru Dan Asano, who also teaches Silat and has also been one of Guru Ken's primary teachers, my teacher's primary teacher. So according to his research on the lineage, it goes back to Alexander the Great. So quite a while ago, Greek times, similar to the wrestling era, right? And the story goes anyway that it was Alexander the Great's, I hope I get this right, Alexander the Great's nephew was going on a travel, and Alexander supposedly gave him 5 of his best bodyguards that were of these different systems. Like one was Chinese, one was from I think Indonesia, and they were from all these different systems. And as these guys were sharing and traveling and whatnot, the fusion of that, what emerged was supposedly the roots of Silat. So that's the mythological version. So so if you look into Silat, there's just hundreds of systems. There's all these different family systems. So anyway, the 2 primary ones are Seurat and Bukti Nagara, and then the other one is was taught by Herman Sawanda, and
Can I interject? We had a guy
Yeah,
who
yeah.
did a Kuntao. Are you familiar
Yeah,
with Kuntao
Kuntao
Silat?
Silat. Yeah. So that was Bill Detoure's. That's that's the
Okay.
youngest brother, who I think is still alive.
Are you familiar with Pukalan Jamindi?
I'm familiar with the term Pukalan.
Okay,
I'm not sure
so
about
that's a system. That's a Indonesian fighting system. I've had some exposure to it.
Yeah. So Pukalan, I believe, just means to hit. It's a striking emphasis, I think. So what else do I want to say? So anyway, that's kind of the Silat side, and there's numerous systems. So influenced in our art, there's Harimau, which is a ground fighting system, which basically means tiger. Harimau. There's Shamandi, which is the bone conditioning system, and also an art unto itself. There's just tons of these arts. Chikalong, which is a I'm not sure its actual emphasis, but it's a takedown art. So Sila is a fascinating art. I don't know. Have you experienced some of the geometry of Bukti Nagara? Either of you?
Well, I've dealt with Silat quite
Have
a
you?
lot because I used to
Yeah.
teach Silat guys, and I used to work at a JKD school, so I've had exposure to Silat. Yes, Penchak Silat.
Penchak Sila, yeah.
Yeah, and then another Salat system that one of those family things, it was a Salat system that other Salat people never heard of, but I
Yeah.
can't think of what it's called now.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I really appreciate the subtlety of the movement. Like it just feels like, when it's done well, it feels like you can't tell what's happening and you're just being compacted and broken. There's something pretty severe about it. So by analogy, here's a good way to kind of explain the two arts that I like to use is, so if you imagine a scenario of a river and a giant boulder in the middle of the river, right? So water's rushing by, big rock. Silat would be its kind of philosophy, its approach of, entering to the center would be the boulder. It's very earth, very, that's its kind of approach. Kali would be the water, as it approaches the boulder, cutting around it, right? And the evasive lines. So that's how, when you have, and that's not, that's probably a huge oversimplification, but it gives you a little bit of the idea of the spirit behind it. And when you fuse them together, you have this fusion of, do you need to be the water or do you need to be the boulder, the rock? And so, so Kali does have a lot of, it is edge or weapons focused, but primarily blade focused. So a lot of the motion groupings and the mindset behind it is oriented around blades. And so it really influences even the empty hand approach, because when you start training in it, you're given a weapons right away, sticks, generally simulating a machete or just a hardwood stick, weapon, but you're learning to extend yourself into that tool like right away. And so you're learning things about ranges right away, and then as you're doing empty hand stuff as well, your motion groupings they're informing each other. So your empty hand material and your weapon material, it's the same but different. So you're actually doing the same motions, but the fulfilling slightly different purpose, because you don't have a knife in your hand, but you're still doing a motion that you would train if you had a blade in your hand, if that makes sense. So and that way it's kind of a simple way to train. It's built kind of redundantly, not boringly, but like very surgical because of the knife. The blades don't require a lot of power, so you have to just, there's a lot of sensitivity, a lot of very closed spaces. And then when it does go to empty hand, you still have that kind of I don't know what you want to say, like very tight space awareness. It still translates. So there's also a lot of I think similar to grappling, you get into a real nice flow state with it too, because there are dynamic partner, you're getting real feedback in real time. You're not just doing static, imaginary drills in the air. So you do have the sense of real feedback and real connection. It's hard to safely pressure test some of it, I think, to get any real, we use training weapons obviously, and you can use gear and stuff, but then you're also not getting the feedback either because you have gear on. So, you do things that you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, I agree. It makes a world of difference. When you don't have gear on,
Yeah.
and you're going really truly live. Because yeah, I've seen guys, well, like I said, when I was at the JKD thing, I've trained a lot of JKD guys through the years because, you know, they're open-minded, they want to learn different stuff, but, you know, I've seen them with the battle gear on, you know, with the sticks and they're
Yeah.
doing all that, and, you know, they're, and it just becomes really, I mean, I'm not saying it's not beneficial whatsoever, of course it is, but it becomes more of a physical workout because, most of those shots, if you didn't have the helmet on, it's over. Okay. Sometimes these guys are getting crowned, man. Yeah, it's bad. But yeah, I get it, you know, but conversely too, on the other side, like I've seen them spar with magic markers and, you know, things, oh, they're, you know, oh, I got you. There's a nick. That's going to be nothing. Okay. It's not going to matter in a street fight because the guy's going to blow through it, you know. So there has to be, you know, some realism to it. You know, you gotta, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, people have gotta either know that this is totally simulated
Right.
or say we need to take it to a different level. I'm willing to do it. Let's go. And that's what I did when I was younger. Just put duct tape on a real blade. Okay. And I've gotten stuck and poked and all of that. But I had to do it. There was just no other way. I couldn't use the fake blades, or back then in Cleveland, we didn't even know about that. But, you know, the guys would play around with rulers or magic markers and say, I can't do this. We got to go real here. If we get hurt, we get hurt. You know, you're young, you don't care. But, you know, because I've been stuck many times in real life in street scenarios. So practicing with the way they wanted to work it, I said, this isn't, I'm not going to do it. It's a waste of time. Let's go for real or go home. That's just how I had to do it. But again, it's because of my background of actually being attacked like that. So, and I just hope nobody has to go through it because it sucks. But, yeah, it's just my thing. But you know, again, I know a lot of guys just aren't into the self-defense aspect of it. They do it for a workout. They do it for camaraderie. They do it for philosophical reasons, and that's great too. You know, like if I go to the gym now, I'm not looking to be, you know, a competitor anymore, lifting, you know, powerlifting. I just want to get a nice workout in, you know, and that's how some people are. They just want to get the workout in. That's fine. What are your thoughts, Joe?
Well, I mean, it is yeah, when it comes to weapons training, it's always it'll never be a perfect thing. Like you said, you can't go completely live because these are death-dealing weapons, you know, and you run out of training partners really quickly. And I know like there's groups like the Dog Brothers where they try and minimalize stuff. But even that they only do very rarely because you can't just take that kind of punishment regularly. You know, and you know, even going, you know, I don't know, MMA full contact a lot. I mean, eventually, you know, especially as we're all older gentlemen here, you want to retain those brain cells, you know, those hits to those heads add up, you know, and so you've got to balance your health between what you're learning and keeping it real. And it's the hardest with when it comes to weapons. Yeah, and you've got to just kind of, I think it's kind of, I think that's always the struggle is that, you know, it's never going to be a completely realistic, and you've got to be honest and keep, I think, just be objective about what you're doing and try, you know, that's where the instructor comes in and tries to keep people
Right.
real about what they're doing, you know, because it can veer off. I mean, just so often in martial arts, and you know, they always have those goofy videos on YouTube where it just becomes artificial to the point of ridiculousness, but it happens gradually, I think, where, you know, they're just kind of cooperating and eventually it just becomes something that's just totally artificial. And it just kind of, I think your training partners and your coaches, you all have to kind of keep each other honest and real about it. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. Just as a side note, one of the, as far as blades, and then I'll return the floor, but I thought it was very interesting. We had a previous guest on here, a friend of mine, Hal, who turned me on to a book. It's a very weird old book, like from the 70s called Prison's Bloody Iron. But it was about these kids who were like in juvie hall, and the way they entertained themselves when they were locked up, you know, just kind of like left them their own devices, is that they would use like the toenail clippers or the file, and they would have little sharp edges on things, and they would fight like that. And that's kind of how this book kind of describes the fighting style that evolved from that. But it was kind of they would get these they could never stick each other, like they could never really do any damage, but it was painful scratches across the chest, or they'd go like with shirtless. And so it had you had literally you had skin in the game. And so a lot of moves, and it was very interesting, and it really kind of informed the way I would look at knife fighting too, about, you don't want to overextend your arms. You don't want to be out there like a fencer when you don't have
Right.
hand protection and arm protection, because that's what's going to get cut up. And so even though it was just these kids kind of messing around through trial and error, they kind of developed a very interesting thing. But it kind of goes to your point about, like, talking about putting duct tape over a blade or something. I mean, it's just people come up with different solutions. And going back to my older coach, Hal, he said, like, when he kind of broached the idea of doing this, like, fingernail, just this very small blade that, just scratch kind of thing, they just hold it in there. No one wanted to do it with them, because people didn't want to go that far with it.
Well, I can tell you from my experience in life, there's no such thing as knife fighting. I mean, you generally never see the knife coming. Okay. It's a guy that if he knows what he's doing and he's out to hurt you, he's not going to telegraph it. And naturally, most people aren't going to pull out a knife and say, hey, let's go. It's just one guy that's just going to stick you, and you probably won't even see it coming. And you may not even feel it in the beginning, but you will when your adrenaline starts going, you start to bleed out. That's what I worry about. Or the guy that just goes nuts. He's got that knife and he's coming at you full blast. So that's when your life is there now. It's life or death. And you've got to prepare for that. A guy Ben's size or a guy my size, if we come at you full blast with a knife, you're not going to get that knife you're not going to get away. Okay. You're not going to do a wrist lock. You're not going to do anything like that. It's going to disarm us. Probably not going to happen unless we drop it on accident. We got to learn to deal with that.
To your point, though, I think, not enough guys who train fighting. And actually it goes back to our Krav friends. I mean, because at least they're doing that. I think, I don't know exactly what they do, but I know at least they try and broach that.
Well, to a degree, even there, they have to tone it down, they're saying.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you can never go 100%, but I think so many of us, like, we train in grappling or boxing, whatever, and these things have very, very important functions. But how often have we actually drilled like that? Because that's an intimidating idea, even in a drilling environment. Someone coming at you with a training blade who's just going to sewing machines try and stab you. Yeah, it's a lot of techniques going to go out the window, I think, in that kind of pressure testing thing.
The prisons, I say, are loaded with people that have knifed people to death or knifed them seriously. These prisoners that are in there, they're not master knife fighters. Okay, these aren't the kings of blades here. These are just, for the most part, untrained guys. It's that knife or gun, whatever, is a dangerous weapon, and you've got to be prepared to lose your life in any encounter. As being the good guy. I've said this 1,000 times. You have to be prepared to know, if I get into it with somebody, I could die. And then therefore, every technique you do, you have to know it's either going to lead you to safety or it could cost you your life. Therefore, you don't have time to mess around. And in the heat of battle, or if you're not feeling 100%, you cannot try a move that you don't have mastered, man. You've got to have some stuff down, and that's your fundamentals: how to move, how to keep your hands up, angles, just to at least ward off stuff. I'm just saying it from personal experience, not only physically to me, but also shit that I've witnessed. You've got to really you have to be impenetrable, and just don't let this person get the drop on you. And that's the thing. A guy who wants to kill you, I mean, who's setting out to kill you, they already have an advantage. You may not know they want you dead. I mean, Joe, I'm sure most people you meet, you figure they want you dead, but the rest of us don't know that. All right. But yeah, you have to just assume this guy's This guy wants to kill you. You don't know that. So who's got the advantage there? So if he's smart about it, you're never going to know. It's just going to happen. So, man, that's just a scary thought, right? I mean, think about it.
Yeah. That brings it back to, it seems the meta skill is awareness,
Yeah.
it's like, don't be there.
There you go.
I've had really good luck with that one.
Well, I mean, look at Kennedy, JFK. I mean, the president of the United States got whacked. Okay. Nobody, me, there's nobody that ever lived could have defended. You can't defend against a sniper bullet, and we have so many of these mass shootings now. And I'm sure there's going to be some martial art assholes that are going to try to capitalize on this. Like, oh, I got a way to defend against bullets. No, you don't. Yeah, these are scenarios that, like you just said, you try not to be there. Well, in these cases, yeah, that would have been the greatest thing, but you're there and there just may be nothing you can do about it. I don't know. We're not in those scenarios. We weren't at Columbine. We weren't at Uvalde. So we don't know, but there are times when you just don't have a chance. I've been there, where like when I got shot, I had no chance. I was, I don't know, 15 feet away, and I had just a split second at 15 feet away. I looked up and there it was, and boom, that's how quick it happens. No defense.
Yeah.
So you know how that goes. That's just how it happens so many times in real life. And I think people get conditioned by the movies, or what they read. Oh yeah, I can survive this or that. Yeah, maybe, but there are chances that you just won't. And I tell my friend Scott, who's been on this show, things have been tense out here lately for everybody, it seems. And I'm like, Scott, you can't be mouthing off to these people in cars, these on the highway, because road rage, you don't know. And he's in no shape. He's got bad health. He's in no condition to defend himself against anything. So, you got to avoid it. Just blow it off.
But yeah, being smart and not looking for trouble. And like I said, yeah, I mean, it's to your point. I mean, there are certain things you cannot defend against, and the only way you can defend of it is to prevent it or be aware it's going to be happening and trying. And that's just something we all have to work on constantly, because awareness is never 100% perfect. So you got to keep working on keeping that. I mean, that's something I think that I'm very lacking, and I'm very introverted. I'm very in my head, and now I have a cell phone. So I think, training with you and training at trucker school, I'm constantly trying to remind myself to vary my vision, go into wide angle vision, and be outside and pay attention. Who's behind me? I mean, if you're going to have a chance in those scenarios, that's going to be it, to see trouble before it happens. So,
well, you're at an disadvantage because you're generally a very positive guy. Okay. You always look on the bright side. Whereas I always look on the absolute worst side. Okay. So, even in things that aren't like, us, when you and I talk about just not even fighting things, oh, you always take the bright side. And I'm like, no, Joe, the bright side rarely happens. It's a lot of bullshit all the time. So that's the one thing I wish you would work on, is just go one day, just try it one day, expecting everything to be the worst it could possibly be. Right. And just look at it from that perspective, because one of these days it's going to really be like that. It's going to be a bad day, and you're not going to be able to put a positive spin on it. Shit's just going to go downhill. So you got to.
You see me as this big optimist, but you should have my therapist on the show, and they'd say otherwise. But
well, yeah, that'll be a 4-part episode, I'm sure. With your therapist, yeah, that would be. But
it's really
no,
meds. It's the meds talking, Tony. That you hear.
Well, speaking of that, I actually had my friend Scott. I gave him when I was living out here, I was studying psychology. I used to mention this when I would do my shows, and I quit when I was going through my divorce. And anyway, Scott's going
That's a
through some
crash
trouble.
course. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's still ongoing. I still get emails, but I don't. But anyway, I told Scott, you need to reach out to this guy. He's a psychologist, and Scott's been seeing him now for 3 weeks, which is really good. I'll give a plug to the guy. His name is Dr. Tim Hayes. He's in Crystal Lake out here. I actually appeared at, well, not appeared, but I was on his radio show years ago. Yeah, he's a good guy. Very he's a doctor. He started off as a not a corrections officer, like a no, not a parole officer. What do you call that when you're I can't think of the term, my memory doesn't work too well, like when you help people, like a
Social worker?
sort of something like that, yeah. And then he delved into he went to school, med school, and but yeah, that's a lot of people too do need to talk to a therapist, not just anyone though, somebody who's experienced, if you have hangups or phobias, because violence happens normally close to home, or actually in the house. That's where most of the violence in the country actually happens, with a spouse or a family member or something, believe it or not. But even outside of that, things tend to happen around where you live, and violence is happening everywhere. So you can't just bury your head in the sand. You were mentioning, Joe, about 6 months ago on the show, a friend of yours got assaulted.
I was
Somebody
thinking
from
about
the
that. Yeah, when we're talking about the road rage, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought a lot about how I train and how I need to incorporate it. But yeah, he just got exactly kind of the very much like what Scott's flirting with, or like tempting disaster there. But you get into some altercation on the road and you don't know who's out there, what's going on with them. They may have just been, you might have just gotten the wrong person who's been looking for someone to hurt. And this guy was not an athlete or a fighter by any stretch of the imagination. He's an older guy, and I don't remember exactly what transpired, but it was just something kind of petty, and someone threw like a cup of coffee at his car, and he was upset enough that he pulled over. What was a mistake, because instead of letting it go, or like we talked about, okay, now it's time to drive to the police station, not try and handle this, know your limitations. And even if, like I say, all of us on this podcast here have had some level of training, doesn't mean the guy isn't packing. This is the United States, and you've got to kind of make some assumptions there for your own safety. But yeah, guy kind of came up and was armed and kind of clubbed him severely with something. He was badly damaged by it, and he's lucky to be alive. The guy could have killed him.
Did they catch the guy?
I don't know. I don't think so, because I don't think he, when we didn't want to push the guy too much. He was one of the instructors in our EMT class. But I won't go further, but it didn't seem like he got much information. Like this went down kind of quickly. He was assaulted, lost consciousness, was ended up in the ER. And you could see it was kind of a very brutal attack. And it was like I said, to me, it's one of those tragic reminders of how quickly things can escalate into a life-threatening situation. And like you said, if someone's coming at you with a weapon, it's not like the fight in I don't know, Rebel Without a Cause, where they're throwing the knife back and forth. It's
I think that's West Side Story, but
that's some dancing too. Yeah, if the dancing's involved, it's West Side Story. But
well, Rita Moreno, I wouldn't mind have been involved with her. She was always an attractive lady.
Yeah, she gets my endorsement as well. So, but anyways, yes. So I was thinking very much of that when you said Scott, because people, like I said, this guy he was an older man, so this was not some kind of someone who was looking to pick a fight with someone who was big and tough. They were looking for a victim to vent their anger on, someone who, and they found him, and it was really, really unfortunate, upsetting. And to my knowledge, I don't know if there was any legal justice with that. So just a word of warning to anybody out there, especially on the road. These can be tough times for people. We're going through some financial stuff, which makes it escalate things even more. People are having bad times, and they're carrying a lot of bad, angry energy with them. And you don't know if you're going to be the person to break the camel's back. So, I mean, obviously, you got to do what you got to do to defend your family and protect things, but don't be dumb and provoke something, because you don't know what's on the other end. So
Well, I'd like to get Ben out here. If you're ever in Chicagoland or just come out, just come and visit,
Awesome.
I can put you up or, you don't want to stay with Joe because just trust me, you don't. He's, but he's a natural for this tracking stuff because I've heard from people like forever, Joe was a stalker, okay, with women. So he's got the advantage already of being able to go after animals. I just, that he looks are deceiving with this guy. But it would be great to have you out for real, and we could hang out, talk more, and exchange ideas and
That would be
tech-
awesome.
Yeah, swap
Be a
swap techniques and shit.
real privilege.
Um,
Yeah. I'm very, I looked into your stuff a little bit, Tony, and I've had a little bit of familiarity with Catch, and I'm inspired and want to, you might get a new student. So
Hey,
stoked.
that would be
awesome. That'd be awesome.
that would be great. Yeah, but I want to pick your brain because I respect your knowledge and that's again, it's part of growth. And I'm going to hopefully grow until I die, and you as well, and Joe and everybody listening. You got to keep learning or whatever it is, whatever term you want to use. But your philosophy that you were talking about earlier today, we're on the same page. As a matter of fact, I've used your terms on here on this show. I've said before, you got to learn how to learn.
Mm.
And that's the big, and to make it like really quick here, because I know we're running out of time, but like we'll use catch wrestling as an example. From a marketing standpoint, you might have a guy say, I know 1,000 holds. Okay. Well, you don't. But what I try to teach people is if I show you top wrist lock, if I show you double wrist lock, if I show you front face lock, if I show you stopper toe hold or something, that might sound like 4 different moves. It's the same move. All the body mechanics are the same. And if you learn how to learn, you'll see the similarities instantly. Just like music, you have what's called an enharmonic equivalent. A C6 chord, well, an A minor 7th is the same chord, just the root of the bass is different. So they're shortcuts, but I hate to use that term shortcuts because it sounds like you're cheating.
Right.
But you hit it on it. Learn how to learn. If you know how to learn, you instinctively know to look for patterns in whatever the thing is that you're learning, because everything in the world is pretty much math based. You'll figure out the patterns, and then all of a sudden, man, you're like you're making leaps and bounds progress.
Yep.
But yeah, please keep in touch with Joe. Yeah, we'd love to have you out. And now Joe and I live about an hour apart, so it doesn't matter.
Cool.
You can hang out with both of us. Joe's closer to the city, where I'm closer to where what you would like, more nature. There's actually a place not that far from here where you can go hiking, Glacial Park. It'd be cool, but
Awesome.
it'd be nice to have you because yeah, just good. It's always great to meet nice people. So
Yeah.
and I like when
Likewise,
Joe
really
travels.
appreciate it.
No, it's just because I'm a people person, and like when Joe travels, I love it when he's just not here. And when he comes back, no, I get sad.
Words hurt, Tony.
Well, no, I'm toughing this is, remember, don't put a positive spin on this. You got to start thinking I'm coming with the nasties. All right, well, listen, we're going to have to wrap it up. My goodness, because we've been on almost 2 hours. This is a long
Okay.
one. This has been great. We have to have you, no matter what, coming out or not coming out, we have to have you back on the show.
Anytime.
And-
Appreciate
and-
the
and-
opportunity.
And let's make the next show all about strategies on fighting, street fighting.
That's great.
But Joe, I really don't have much parting thoughts because I have nothing coming up until the seminar, so we could talk about that later. But
I was gonna
It
say,
is-
let's have Ben plug your
Yeah.
school, plug the upcoming workshop. So everybody, just as a reminder, we talked about it
Cool.
again, but yeah, kind of
Sure.
lay it on us.
So thank you for that. Tribaledge.life is my website. That's kind of the general umbrella school for everything. And then inside of that, part of that, our dojo is called Hero Lab. And it's just, that's where we do the awareness, movement, martial art, tactics, ethical training stuff. And the program coming up is the Protector course. It's from the 4th to the 10th. It's a week long. Food is included. And you can find information for that on our website, fiberledge.life. So great to we love working
Put that
with.
in put that in the on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, the
So,
links will be below
yeah.
for whoever's
Yeah.
Awesome.
watching.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that. Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Oh, no, anything we can do to help. No, please, feel free. But yeah, thanks. Thanks for having, for being here, and we hope to see you.
Right on.
Yeah,
right,
no,
you
yeah.
take care.
Thanks for making the
Take
time.
care.
It was a great
See you.
conversation.
Yeah,
right,
thank you, Joe. Thanks for reaching out.
No problem. All right. Goodbye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.